how can people live a very well balanced, fulfilling life?
Very difficult, actually. Trauma impacts physical, mental, emotional well-being. Balance comes temporarily.
Human body is designed to manage its own balance.
We absolutely do. It's deep inside the body. And our first trauma is the day the body remembers everything. That's where I got shot. Now that's powerful healing.
Do you think it's possible?
Caroline Purvey, a transformational leader, best-selling co-author, and expert in emotional healing. With over 25 years of yoga teaching experience and a deep understanding of anatomy, Caroline has dedicated her life to helping others break free from the pain of their past. Voted one of the top 10 women to watch in well-being by About Time magazine, Caroline combines her passion for teaching, business, and therapy to guide people toward inner peace and lasting freedom.
Caroline, thank you for joining us on this podcast today. It is great to see you're doing amazing work on, making people to live their life to the fullest without holding on to their past and also the problems what they have heard in the past, like trauma and other issues they carry on with it. Can you explain, how do you say this, or how can people live a very well balanced, fulfilling life?
Well, Xavier, thank you for inviting me to share my message. And that is a very good question. How can you live a balanced, stress-free life? Very difficult, actually. Because of the nature of the work that I do, I know just how much stress, overwhelm and trauma impacts physical, mental, emotional well-being. And on top of that, behaviours. So the more that one has been through at different levels, the more challenging it is to actually have balance, to find balance. Balance comes temporarily because we might do something, maybe go for a run or have a nice massage and then we feel great. But then
Yes.
maybe some days later, maybe a week later or 3 weeks later, there it is again. We're back out of balance. So it's a continuum.
It is. And don't you think human body is designed to manage its own balances by hormones and their own mechanisms within? As you know, your human body has amazing regulatory mechanism of temperature. The same way, don't we all have a mechanism which balance our emotions, physical well-being and mental well-being altogether?
We absolutely do. It's deep inside the body.
Okay.
The muscle called the psoas, that's Psoas. And the psoas muscle is where we hold the tension. And our first trauma is the day we're born. And when you think of a baby going into startle response, the body's saying you're breathing, you've got a heart, and you've got one other piece here that is going to rebalance your body when you go through stress. Because stress and trauma is part of life. We don't see it coming. Sometimes we're in control of it. Most times we're not. And that's why we get out of balance. So when we learn to release from the psoas muscle, of which I have to say, the majority of people have never heard of, getting awareness out there now of this hidden treasure in our body that holds all that tension, then we start to find balance because it's rebalancing the nervous system.
As you rightly say, psoas muscle, not many, common people understand where it is. I'm being a physiotherapist, loads of physios watching this episode, they know where is the psoas muscle. Psoas muscle starts on the back end of your diaphragm and passes all the way down towards your pelvis, on the back end of the pelvis, and inside of the pelvis, and goes into attaching with a hip joint. And that is the one major muscle, creates your hip flexion and also maintain your body posture. It's a large muscle in the body.
It is. Absolutely it is. But it's interesting, I'm a yoga teacher, and it was never taught to me in my yoga education, and I've done many trainings. It's something that I discovered years later, the true meaning of the psoas. And yes, it holds the upper body to the lower body. We wouldn't be standing if we didn't have that muscle. But it's called the hidden treasure because it's where we hold our fears, our emotions, and it impacts our breathing. As you say, it's attached to the diaphragm.
It is.
So you imagine if you're a passenger in a car and the brakes are rammed on, and I'm sure we've all been there, and suddenly you go into that tonic freeze. That's your psoas saying, okay, I'm here, I'm protecting you, protecting your front body from injury.
Yes.
And then it should be rest and digest. Instead of that, the adrenaline and cortisol that's pumped into the body and the tension from that flinch gets stored and it builds up.
So our body don't forget that traumatic episode or the preparation towards the traumatic episode at all.
Absolutely. The body remembers everything.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. This is new to me.
That's the eye-opener.
Wow. I thought, your brain remembers everything in a small little centers or cells within, and the body just responds to the brain. But as you say, it makes sense. Your body, we talk about muscle memory, and the body remembers everything.
It absolutely does. And, that comes as a big surprise. I know I jump in, but I want to share a little story when I was working in prison. When an inmate sits up and says, I felt burning in my leg. That's where I got shot. Now that's powerful healing. Because the body's remembered that.
This is the same way we think about phantom leg, isn't it? When even after amputated trauma or anything where the leg is lost and still people feel it. The body remembers everything. The representation of the legs are still very much live in our brain.
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay. So if a person want to lead or they aim to think that, I should not have a stress in my life at all, do you think it's possible? Because in a day-to-day life, we do go through, stress, joy, and pain and everything as a part of a normal life.
That's very interesting. Now, as a yoga teacher, in yoga philosophy, there's that don't eat too much, don't eat too little.
Okay.
Don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little. It's the balance.
Everything is on the balance.
Right? And we find true balance. Yoga's very aligned to the work I do because it's about energy. And I'm blocking the energy, but it's a slower process and people will never get deep into their psoas. But when clients get deep into their psoas, and I know it from my own experience, I never saw myself when I started out with this as somebody that had been through a life of trauma. And yet when I wrote my book and I share my stories, I think, heck, it was the way I was dealing with it. I was tough. I was pressing the override button. I was working through things and not acknowledging things. And so when you heal from the psoas, you not only heal from your past, but you build resilience.
That's true.
Because you become, a bit Teflon.
Yes.
Like a coat of armour
yes.
with it. I'm not going to be taking it in here. And whatever I go through, I know I can spend 10 minutes releasing that, gone.
I read all about your work. You talk quite a lot about the stress bucket. And that term I've never come across in the past, even though I'm dealing with patients and people for a long time. You have 30 years of experience being a yoga teacher. I'm just under 3 decades in physiotherapy. How did you come up with this term stress bucket? Explain it, please.
Well, I'm a believer in keep language simple, right? We don't need complicated.
Life was already
Pack
complicated.
everything in, stuff that will boggle the mind. But why? The term stress bucket was coined back in the 90s, I think, by Brabin and I can't remember the other guy's name, as psychologists. So it's an analogy, and people use different analogies. It's like the pint half full and all of that. But we all understand the stress bucket, but I have used it and developed it and created a scenario around it so that whether you're 5 years old or 85 years old, you get it. So we're all stress buckets, and we fill our bucket with our history. And that history of ours is an acronym of everything we've ever gone through. And we've all got our own unique, different history. What you've experienced in life is not the same as everybody else. It's yours. Now, what happens when that stress bucket fills? That's when we start to get the knocking on the side. Hang on, back, hip, neck, shoulder pain, anxiety, depression, headaches, gut problems.
IBS, fibromyalgia.
Yeah. And head fog, lack of clarity, focus, poor memory, can't sleep. At worst, and it is at worst, but it comes from the full bucket. High blood pressure, stroke, cancer, heart attack, suicide.
Wow.
And you know what? Nobody wants to take their own life. And I put my story out there, and I was at a very low time in my life years ago, and my story's in the book. I can talk about it without the emotion, without the feeling. I never wanted to take my own life. As a young single mum with 3 children. Of course I didn't. I just wanted to end the pain I was experiencing.
Yes.
And that is all anybody does. But the joy and the hope is we can stop it. We can stop it. There's many organisations, suicide prevention.
Good Samaritan.
Yeah, all over. And as I said to one leader who lost his own son, I'm sorry you lost your son. And it's great work you're doing, but you will never have 0 suicide because you're one piece missing of the jigsaw. And that is fact. But we don't know what we don't know until we know it.
That's true. Agree.
And then when we experience it, something else.
In your experience, why some people fill this bucket to the brim, never seeks help to empty it? And in some part of the world, I've seen people go to therapists quite regularly. They have their own psychologist support. Some places they go to temple, churches, and places to offload their bucket.
Yeah.
Why not many people seek support or help?
Well, that in itself, and I have seen them from all walks over 13 years. Because when I came out of education, I created more therapies I trained in more therapies. But then it's like, no, I can't do those anymore because there's something much deeper and more powerful. And so within all that, I have spoken, worked with thousands. What do people do when the bucket gets full? Well, one of 5 things. Ignore it.
Oh my God.
We work with the fire, the police.
Yes.
Right? The tough buckets.
They think they can handle it all.
I put myself in that category before I'd worked it out. But they're tough. Right? I'm okay. You ask anybody in the UK, how are you today? Oh, I'm okay. Classic stock answer. But we don't know what's going on in
That's
here.
true. Truly inside.
People get comfortable with their own discomfort, so they don't even realise there's something going on. They go to the doctor, wave your magic wand, make me better, give me your pills, your lotions, your potions, right?
Yes.
But it's not a cure. It's
No.
not getting to the root. What has caused all this in the first place? So not only from medication, you get side effects. But you block what's going on and maybe create other problems. well, then you can't talk it out of the body. Professor Gordon Turnbull, world-renowned clinical trauma psychologist, who I was fortunate enough to be introduced to when I first started my work. And he wrote the foreword for my book. And the first thing he ever said to me, we now have to get it out of the body because talking just doesn't do it. Now, how can you talk about a problem when something happened to you as a 6-month-old baby? You don't remember.
No.
Children don't remember. Children remain in freeze. So they grow up holding on to what's in their bucket and building on it, getting through, and then suddenly something changes. All of these symptoms start to emerge. And it's not from something they did in that day, that week. It's something that manifested years ago. It's an accumulation. The other biggest thing, what a crazy day at work. So stressful, I'll have a drink. The effect
masking
wears off,
it.
I'll have another one, right? And before we know it, we've got an addiction, whether that's alcohol, drugs, food, OCD behaviours, from compulsive buying habits, cleaning habits, all sorts. Why? Because it's a coping strategy. Unfortunately, it leads to addiction, so we've got another major problem. I guarantee you talk to anybody with addictive behaviour and they've got history.
That's true.
They've got history. They're masking something. They just want a feel-good factor. They want to block. But unless they choose to do something about it, they're on the slippery slope, sitting on the sinking ship, just going down.
God.
Everybody is on the ship. Everybody. They're never released from their Psoas. They're on the ship because they're holding what they hold and they're doing their best. Lots of little taps on the bucket. If you've got deep pockets, you go and get treatment. There are lots of little things one can do for themselves, whether that's running, swimming, jumping in a cold tub, which is flavour of the month, breathing. But you have to keep doing it. So they are coping mechanisms, not healing mechanisms.
That's true. So people buy this kind of the ice tubs and shopping habits and buying habits. Doesn't fix the problem. They're just putting a tape on it and trying to move on, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've seen it firsthand. Being a musculoskeletal physiotherapist for this many years, I've always questioned my ideology. Why, if I have 2 patients with a sciatic pain or a brachiology pain, and one of them gets better within 3 weeks and off they go, back on cycling, swimming and everything, why some people get debilitating pain and sharp shooting pain in their legs for a lifetime and they never get out of the pain? And I felt there is a connection to their emotions, their body memory and everything, but I never managed to put it together. Everything is connected, heavily involved by the mind, soul, and the physical memory.
Yeah. Mind, body are deeply connected. We don't have one without the other. The interesting thing is we're fixated on getting it out of here and we're all good. Right? But actually we're not. And the dots are not being joined. You've got back pain, you go and see a back doctor. You've got headaches, you go and see somebody else. You've got IBS, gut problems, you go and see somebody else. I actually had a specialist come to me dripping in his own anxiety. And of all the things, what was he specialist of? IBS. And when he did his release, he said, there are some people I can't help. I said, well, now you know why. Right? Because
I felt the same.
It's trauma, stuck in the body, only one way to release it, and that's the way to do it.
How can they release it? You talk about our human connection to the animals.
Yes.
And animals shake it off, or animals shake it off. Humans don't. How do we explain that?
Because we've lost touch with our own body. Now, if I said to you, forget political correctness, might be your own child, comes into you They've been outside, they're crying, they're upset, they appear frightened, and they're shaking like a leaf. What is your first reaction?
We lift them up and give them a cuddle and tell them it's all okay.
Absolutely. And do you know what? That's a response I get off pretty much everybody. What we're doing with children is suppressing the body's natural ability to let go of the tension, the adrenaline, cortisol, and calm down. And animals do exactly that. Lion chases the zebra runs and runs, he gets free of the predator. Before he eats grass, he will do one thing: have a tremor.
Shaking it off.
Shaking it off. And then he's calm, he'll carry on, eat grass. You know, that can happen 10 times in a day.
Wow.
That's animals in the wild do that. I had a client once, and he said to me when he finished, he was ex-military, which I kind of thought at the time, but I didn't really know. And he was in security. And he said to me, there's one thing that resonated with me that you've shared, that I've seen many times. The lion chasing the zebra and the zebra releasing. Now, going back to birth, we were born with that as a survival tool, because when we release that tension, we're rebalancing the nervous system. Because the more we hold, the more tense we get. You know, we're pulling. It's like the nerves are like guy lines on a tent. So imagine they get tighter, something's going to snap. But what happens with all that tension and pulling on the nerves is the systems in our body start to malfunction. So, you know, we might have heart palpitations because the heart's building up. We have circulatory problems. We have urinary tract problems, you know, gut problems. All sorts of things are going on. Breathing is, you know, respiratory system. Every system in the body. But it impacts people in different ways. So back to there's no joining of the dots. We don't understand our body. And so therefore, we think, let's talk it out, let's get it out of the mind, let's park it. I remember being in prison, and one of the inmates in the circle, he said, I'm loving all of this, right? Does the release, comes back the next week, and how have you been in the last week? Well, this man was pretty angry. Why? Because he said, I had got rid of all my
Stress.
trauma, yeah. He said, and now you two have brought it back up. And I let him ramble. And then I said, but this is the whole point. Your body's remembered it all. So although you might have parked it up here, put it on a bit of paper, put it in a balloon, let it go off, you know, all the different ways we can let go of the past. We let go of it up here, but we don't let go of it in here. And his body was still holding it. And he got it. And at the end of the 6-week program, he was a transformed man. And that is wonderful to see, because prisons is a place where this should be.
Introduced.
Because I always said, get me into prison. It's full of angry children. And talking to all these gentlemen in prison, right? Because they were born human, but their bucket filled with stuff that was not of their doing.
So what is this, as you say, this zebra shake it off? And is there any way humans can release it all and move away from it? Or do you have anything they can shake it off and you know, just move on, and so that the body do not keep on filling the stress bucket?
Yeah, absolutely there is. And that is the work that I do, is showing people how they can activate their Psoas so that their body begins to neurogenically tremor. So it activates the nervous system from the brainstem. So although it's so simple, I could get a 10-year-old to show you how to do it. It's powerful. And that's why I've spent 13 years making sure that clients get the education, that they get the support. Because when you start emptying that stress bucket, it depends what's in it. Your body is like going through a retracing. What's gone in has to come out. So what happens when they start releasing is memories can come up. Memories from the day they're born. They all witnessed it all. Feelings, blocked feelings. Feelings one can't express, particularly as a child. Children can't run away and they can't fight back to defend themselves. So they block the feelings, the fear, the anger, the hate, the hurt, the grief, the sadness. And so when one releases layer by layer, not all at once, the body says, you know what, this feeling's got to come up. And it might be associated with a memory. It might not. Emotions come up. People laugh, they cry, they scream, they shout when they release. They go with, and I empower them to feel comfortable and confident. Yes, of course, it's scary. And that's one of the reasons, going back to what we were saying previously, why people are afraid. They conjure up an image of what is going to happen. But ironically, the muscle itself is where they hold those fears. And so when they finally start, and there are those that are like, get me on it, I need to do this and I need to do it now. But we have to want. We have to want to do that. But when we do it, we start to discover the power of the body to let go. So the invoking gentle tremoring, and then the body takes over.
So how people can get this work, or can they do it online with you or your team to experience this release so that people can move on?
Oh, absolutely. Look, the main thing is here, Xavier, is nobody else can heal us like we can heal ourselves.
Ourselves, yes.
One, we have to be hungry enough to want to do that.
Yes.
And two, we have to take responsibility. I've worked with many counsellors, therapists, yoga teachers, all battling with their own stress and trauma. And they're looking after people that are bringing trauma to their table. And most people in those fields will take it on board because they need to debrief after sessions. But when we take responsibility for ourselves, we do the internal healing, because unlike modalities, everything comes from the outside in. This comes from the inside out, and nobody can get into that deep place other than ourselves. When we do that, then we can talk about what comes up. So the counsellor, the therapist is there with that support when it's needed. Otherwise, done all my talking, now I'm free. Move on, let somebody else get in the queue. When we heal within, nutrition makes more sense.
Yes.
Because if eating is a habit, addiction coaches come into play to help with that process of letting go, but the letting go gets easier because we get rid of the root cause. And when we get rid of that root cause, I don't need that anymore. People come off their alcohol, their drugs, their cigarettes, and all the rest of it.
When I read your book, this is a real good work you have done. Explain all about this. Feel it to, heal it.
Feel it to heal it. Yeah.
And this is the concept, I worked in the NHS for a long time, never heard of, never discussed it during my educations. I don't know why we missed such a big subject. And in my opinion, it plays a fundamental role in humans helping their own self. Feel it to heal it.
Yeah.
Rather than numbing our own body and emotions, we should feel it to heal it. Explain a bit more about your book and all the articles in it. Really good job you have done here.
Thank you. Well, Feel It to Heal It came about when I was working with individuals and noticing just what was coming up. The emotions of the experience they might have had as a child, the feelings that have got blocked, people that haven't been able to express their grief. And so those tears and emotions come up. Where were they? Stuffed inside. Because they had no way to release. But when you start releasing from the core, you have to feel it. Particularly, the body remembers pain. That is another thing. When somebody's releasing and they say, God, I've got terrible pain in my elbow. Well, have you had any accidents, injuries before? Not that I can remember. And then suddenly, I fell off my bike when I was a child and broke my elbow.
Yes.
The pains come up and that's it. I always remember a case, a doctor in Peterborough became a great fan of my work after doing a private workshop for her and some of her patients to get it. And one of her mental health members of staff had dreadful back pain, 15 tablets to maintain it, only a young woman. When she did the practice, she came back to another workshop we did in Peterborough at the time, and she told everybody that I learned this 6 weeks ago and I've already started reducing my tablets. She's off all medication and living a normal life. Because the body's unravelled the cause, the tensions, the pulls on the joints. So the body becomes immobile, stiff. And when they release, they feel the pain, as I explained, they feel the emotion, the feelings. And then when it's released, what you see is what you're healing from. What you've expressed doesn't happen every time, but it comes when it's ready. It might be 3 days later. Suddenly you wake up and you're very angry. This is old anger coming out of the body. And so my work is about educating people how to manage this process, because you don't do the 4 sessions of the program and then it's gone. It's the beginning of the journey. You've got all the tools. And in that process, they then start to let go of their past. It is an online program, which I never thought was possible. But
COVID made everything possible.
We get pushed out our comfort zone. I work with my son. We're 2 halves of one whole. He turned his life around. He tells his story. But he went through an acrimonious divorce. As a result, making a big mistake financially. He had no money. He found himself sleeping on a mattress on a friend's shop floor, living on a diet of Aldi wine. And then he suddenly thought, I've got 3 children, what am I doing? And he remembered, because he had no money, what can I do? What his mother taught him. And he started to spiral back up. Remember that spiral down? He was spiraling down quicker than that. But then he spiraled back up. It turned his life around, and he's so passionate, like myself. People say to me, oh, how do you keep doing that? Why do you keep talking to people and they're not listening? I said, because that one person that changes their life, that makes it worthwhile.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
In the world we're living in now, right, we don't know what is around the corner. We've got countries at war, there's talk of a 3rd World War. What are we going to do? Everybody's bucket is filling. So we have a tool within us that we can all do. And I don't call it therapy. It's not therapy. I'm not doing anything to anybody. I'm saying your body knows something you've forgotten. This is how you do it. This is why you do it. This is support you get. This is what could happen. Start healing today.
Self-help is the best help.
It is. It absolutely is. And, of course, back to, if you think of a Venn diagram, right at the core, you heal from the inside.
Yes.
Then you're more interested, if eating is your addiction, to listen to what the nutritionist has got to say. With the best will in the world, people sign up with nutritionists. I've got to lose this weight, but they're not getting that it's from trauma. And they're not going to start slithering the vegetables and eating carrots because the nutritionist said so. Because the body craves the dopamine.
Yeah.
That's what we get from all these things, dopamine, the feel-good factor. Oh, that was a great box of donuts, right? I feel good after that, but then it wears off and then we feel bad again. And so we go with it again. It's a vicious cycle. But when we release, we start talking to the nutritionist, the physical work, whether that's a private
physiotherapy or elsewhere.
Yeah. The counselling, the coach. I've never been me. I've never lived my own life. I don't know who I am. But now I'm feeling different. I'm feeling whole. Where do I go? So you've got coaches for all sorts of different directions that we need that support. Because many adults, they have low self-esteem, lack of self-belief. They've lost their voice. They don't say what they mean and mean what they say. And yet when they start healing, out comes that voice. I am good enough. I believe in me. People are listening to me. I'm learning to say no. It's powerful. Very powerful.
Wow. It's a wonderful message. Thank you, Caroline, for sharing your message. You know, it clearly says, feel it to heal it. And people need to take their physical health at the same time. Mental well-being is the most important thing. If these two don't go hand in hand, we all will end up in pain. That's not the right way to do it. I would, direct anybody to your website or look for yourself. You're not too far in Kent. You are in Dover. You should be able to help lots of our clients together. Thank you for your sharing your lifetime worth. Amazing. Great job.
Thank you. And it's not over yet.
You're just starting with
and we work globally. It doesn't matter where I am in the world. And thanks to the online and face-to-face online, anybody can
seek help from you.
Take help.
Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.